1. Genesis. It all begins with God creating everything: light, sky, land, animals, and humans. But paradise is short-lived. Adam and Eve mess up, Cain kills Abel, and things spiral. God wipes the slate clean with a flood, but saves Noah. Later, he makes a promise to Abraham. Through his family, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, God sets the foundation for his rescue plan. 2nd Exodus. The Israelites are trapped in slavery, and God isn't having it. He sends Moses to confront Pharaoh. After 10 brutal plagues and a parted sea, they're free. At Mount Sinai, they get the 10 Commandments and a new identity. God is close, literally dwelling in their midst. Exodus is rescue, covenant, and the start of a nation learning to trust. 3rd Leviticus. Leviticus is where things get detailed. God lays out a system of sacrifices, purity rules, and holy days. Why? So a broken people can live near a holy God. It's not about control, it's about closeness. Through priests, offerings, and rituals, God teaches Israel how to be clean, fair, and faithful. Hard reading? Yes, but deeply relational and sacred. Numbers. What should have been a short walk turns into a 40-year detour. The Israelites complain, panic, and refuse to trust God, so he makes them wander. But he doesn't abandon them. He feeds them, leads them, and raises up a new generation. Numbers is messy, frustrating, and real, proof that even when people fail, God keeps showing up. 5. Deuteronomy. Moses knows his time is up. Before the people enter Canaan, he gives a final heart-to-heart. Remember what God's done. Don't mess this up. He retells the law, warns about consequences, and reminds them of God's love. Then he dies. Deuteronomy feels like a dad giving parting wisdom, firm but full of hope for what's ahead. 6. Joshua. Moses passes the baton to Joshua, who leads Israel into the promised land. Walls crumble at Jericho, cities fall, and the tribes settle in. God fights for them, but only if they obey. Joshua ends by urging everyone to stay faithful. It's not just a conquest story. It's about learning that promises come with responsibility. 7. Judges. Without a leader, Israel spirals. People sin, enemies attack, they cry for help, and God sends a rescuer. Then it happens again and again. Judges gives us heroes like Deborah and Samson, but also some of the darkest moments in the Bible. It's a wild, chaotic time that shows what happens when everyone does what's right in their own eyes. 8. Ruth. While chaos ruled in Judges, one quiet story unfolds. Ruth, a foreign widow, sticks with her Israelite mother-in-law, Naomi. They're poor and grieving, but Ruth works hard, meets Boaz, and finds redemption in more ways than one. It's a story of loyalty, kindness, and how God weaves ordinary lives into extraordinary purposes. Ruth becomes the great-grandma of King David. 9. 1 Samuel. Israel wants a king like everyone else, and God gives them Saul. He starts strong, but unravels fast. Meanwhile, a young shepherd named David kills a giant and starts rising. The tension builds between Saul and David, and through it all, God shows he's more interested in humble hearts than outward power. Leadership, jealousy, and faith, it's all here. 10 Samuel. David finally becomes king, and what a ride. He unites the tribes, captures Jerusalem, and dances before the Lord. But his personal failures hit hard: adultery, murder, and family breakdown. His own son tries to steal the throne. 2 Samuel is raw and complicated, showing how even the best leaders are flawed, and how mercy can still write the final word. 11th, 1 Kings. David dies, and Solomon takes the crown. He's wise, wealthy, and builds the temple, but his heart drifts. Too many wives, too many idols. After Solomon, the kingdom splits: Israel in the north, Judah in the south. Some kings try to follow God, but most don't. 1 Kings shows how fast power can crumble when loyalty fades. 12th, 2 Kings. The downward spiral continues. Elijah leaves in a whirlwind. Elisha takes up the mantle. Israel keeps rebelling and is conquered by Assyria. Judah hangs on longer, but eventually, Babylon takes them too. Even the temple is destroyed. 2 Kings is tragic. Decades of warnings ignored, corruption unchecked. But there's a flicker of hope. God hasn't forgotten his promise. 13th. 1 Chronicles. This book goes back to the beginning, literally, with genealogies from Adam to David. But it skips the drama and focuses on David's faith, worship, and temple prep. It's less scandal and more spiritual legacy. 1 Chronicles is written for returning exiles, reminding them, your past isn't lost. God's covenant still stands. Start again. Build with faith. 14. 2 Chronicles. Solomon builds the temple, and Judah's kings rise and fall. We get the good ones like Hezekiah and Josiah, and the bad ones who plunge the nation into disaster. The story ends with Jerusalem destroyed, but also with a Persian king saying, go home, rebuild. It's history with a purpose, to remind Israel that mercy can rebuild ruins. 15th Ezra. 70 years after exile, a small group returns to Jerusalem. Ezra isn't there yet, but the temple's being rebuilt, slowly and with opposition. When Ezra arrives, he's all about spiritual reform. He teaches the law, confronts compromise, and weeps over sin. Ezra's mission is clear. You're home now, so live like people who remember who brought you here. 16th. Nehemiah. Nehemiah hears Jerusalem's walls are in ruins. He gets permission from Persia's king, returns and rebuilds in record time, despite enemies mocking and threatening. But he doesn't stop there. He restores justice, reads scripture aloud, and leads the people back to God. Nehemiah is grit, prayer, leadership, and revival. It's what rebuilding looks like from the inside out. 17. Esther. Esther is queen, but no one knows she's Jewish. When a royal advisor plots genocide, her cousin Mordecai urges her to speak up. Maybe you're queen for such a time as this. She risks everything and saves her people. God's name is never mentioned in Esther, but his fingerprints are all over it. Quiet courage changes everything. 18. Job. Job has it all, then loses everything: family, health, wealth. His friends say he must have done something wrong. Job knows he hasn't and demands answers. God finally responds, not with explanations but with majesty. Job humbles himself, and God restores him. The story doesn't tie everything in a bow, but it asks, can you trust God, even in silence? 19th Psalms. Psalms is Israel's songbook, raw, emotional, messy, beautiful. David and others cry out in pain, shout in praise, wrestle with doubt, and rest in God's promises. Whether you're at your highest or lowest, there's a psalm for you. It's not polished religion, it's heart-to-heart honesty with God. And somehow, through every lament and lyric, hope rises. 20. Proverbs. Life is complicated, but Proverbs offers wisdom in short, punchy sayings. It's not just about smarts, it's about living with integrity. Themes like money, work, speech, relationships, and pride show up again and again. The golden thread? Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs isn't a formula, it's a compass for people trying to live wisely. 21. Ecclesiastes. A wise man looks back on everything he chased, pleasure, success, work, wisdom, and says, it's all meaningless. Harsh? Maybe, but honest. Life under the sun doesn't satisfy. The book wrestles with big questions and lands here. Fear God, keep his commands. Ecclesiastes is the ache behind the smile, the reminder that eternity matters more than momentary thrill. 22nd Song of Songs. This book is pure poetry, an intimate, emotional back and forth between two lovers. It celebrates desire, beauty, longing, and covenant love. Some see it as an allegory for God and his people, others as a tribute to marital joy. Either way, it's passionate and sacred. Song of Songs says, love, when loyal and pure, reflects something divine. 23rd. Isaiah. Isaiah warns Judah, judgment is coming, but woven through the warnings are promises of restoration, of a suffering servant, of a new king who'll bring peace. His vision is massive, from exile to a renewed creation. Isaiah spans darkness and hope, despair and deliverance. It's a masterpiece of prophecy, showing God's justice and mercy in full balance. 24. Jeremiah. He's young, reluctant, and heartbroken, but Jeremiah speaks anyway. He calls Judah to repent, but they mock him and keep spiraling. As Babylon closes in, he weeps for the people and writes of a future covenant written on hearts. Jeremiah's life is lonely, his message heavy, but his hope is fierce. Sometimes truth-tellers get bruised, but they're never ignored by God. 25th. Lamentations. Jerusalem has fallen, and the grief is overwhelming. Lamentations is 5 poems, raw, painful, honest. The city lies in ruins, the people are broken, and God feels distant. But in the middle of it all, a whisper of hope breaks through. Great is your faithfulness. This book teaches us how to cry out without losing sight of mercy. 26. Ezekiel. Ezekiel sees visions that stretch imagination, wheels and wheels, dry bones rising, a new temple descending. From exile in Babylon, he speaks judgment and promise. God shows him Israel's corruption, but also a future where his spirit transforms hearts. Ezekiel is strange, bold, and unforgettable, a reminder that God isn't just present in temples. He's present even in exile. 27. Daniel. Daniel is a captive in Babylon, but he never forgets who he belongs to. He interprets dreams, survives lions, and prays despite threats. His visions predict empires rising and falling, and a final kingdom that lasts forever. Daniel is about courage in foreign lands and faith that doesn't bend. No matter who's in power, God still rules. 28th. Hosea. God tells Hosea to marry a woman who won't be faithful, just like Israel's been unfaithful to him. Hosea's painful marriage becomes a picture of God's heartbreak and his relentless love. Even when betrayed, he longs to heal and restore. Hosea is intimate, aching, and full of hope. It's love that stays, even when it's been shattered. 29th. Joel. A swarm of locusts devastates everything, a wake-up call. Joel tells Judah it's not just about bugs, it's about their hearts. He calls for fasting, weeping, returning to God. Then he flips the script. One day God will pour out his spirit on all people. Joel moves from disaster to promise, from chewing locusts to a global outpouring of grace. 30. Amos. Amos is a farmer turned prophet who storms into Israel's comfort zone. He doesn't hold back. Your luxury, your fake worship, your injustice, it's all under judgment. But he's not just shouting, he's pleading. The final words offer restoration. Amos reminds us, God cares about justice, and if we ignore the poor, we're not nearly as holy as we think. 31st. Obadiah. It's the shortest Old Testament book, but it hits hard. Obadiah calls out Edom, Israel's neighbor and relative, for gloating when Jerusalem fell. You stood by, you cheered, now judgment's coming for you. It's a warning that pride goes before collapse, but it ends with hope. God's people will rise again, and his justice will eventually set things right. 32nd. Jonah. God sends Jonah to Nineveh. He runs. A storm hits, a fish swallows, Jonah prays and gets spat out. He finally obeys, Nineveh repents, and Jonah's mad about it. Why? Because he wanted judgment, not mercy. Jonah isn't about a fish, it's about a prophet who can't handle grace and a God who gives it anyway, even to enemies. 33rd. Micah. Micah sees the mess, corrupt leaders, lying prophets, injustice everywhere, but he also sees hope. A ruler will come from Bethlehem. He'll bring peace and shepherd God's people. Until then, walk humbly, love mercy, do justice. Micah blends harsh truth with tender promise. It's a prophetic slap and a hug, calling us out and drawing us in. 34th, Nahum. Nahum returns to Nineveh, the same city Jonah preached to, but this time no one's repenting. Judgment is certain. The once great empire that crushed nations will be crushed itself. It's a sobering reminder. God's mercy is vast, but not endless. Nahum is poetic, fierce, and final. Empires fall, but God's justice never wavers. 35. Habakkuk. Habakkuk sees Babylon rising and asks God, "Seriously? You're using them to punish us?" God says yes, but don't worry, justice is coming. Habakkuk wrestles, waits, and finally worships. His final words echo through history. Even if everything fails, I will rejoice. It's a journal of honest faith, one that doubts loudly and still chooses to trust. 36. Zephaniah. Zephaniah warns that the day of the Lord is coming, an unshakable judgment against sin. But God isn't just angry, He's jealous for His people. After the fire comes restoration. God sings over His people, quiets them with His love, and gathers the broken. Zephaniah begins with terror and ends with tenderness. Justice clears the way for joy. 37th. Haggai. The people return from exile, but instead of rebuilding God's temple, they focus on their own homes. Haggai calls them out. You're planting but not harvesting. You're earning but not enjoying. Put God first. Rebuild what matters. When they listen, blessing returns. Haggai's message is short but loud. Priorities matter, and obedience can reignite what feels forgotten. 38th Zechariah. Visions of flying scrolls, lampstands, and a woman in a basket. Zechariah's dreams are vivid and strange, but full of hope. He calls Israel to finish the temple, and he sees beyond, a coming king pierced and rejected, yet victorious. Zechariah is about present obedience and future glory. God's plan isn't over. It's just getting started. 39th Malachi. The Old Testament closes with a warning. God's people are slipping again, offering leftovers, skipping tithes, and asking, "What's the point?" Malachi reminds them, God sees, God listens, and God keeps score. But He also promises, the Son of Righteousness will rise, and someone, Elijah-like, will come to prepare the way. The stage is set. Now, we wait. And that's every book of the Old Testament. Story by story, warning by promise, from creation to exile to hope. It's not just ancient history, it's a living thread that still speaks today. If this helped you see the Bible more clearly, hit that like button and share it with someone who's just getting started. And if you want to dive into the New Testament next, or explore the wild stories between the lines, subscribe now and don't miss what's coming next. The story's just getting good.